We are here. We are here, bald, bearded, and bold, back again. We are here today from beautiful Wheeling, downtown Wheeling, West Virginia, as you know, where we always tend to come from. And we are here today. We have an honored guest. I am honored to have him. I've been purchasing goods and services from his establishment for many, many years.
Keeping us in business.
Trying my best. I think there's many that keep you in business. You get lots of loyalty. And we're here with Dom Cerrone with Good Mansion Wines. Dom, you are an amazing establishment. Give us a little, to start the show off with, a little background on yourself and a little background on how you started here and kind of what you do.
Well, first off, thank you so much for coming here to talk to us. I really appreciate it. And thank you for all of your business over the years.
Oh, my God.
Certainly. My gosh, we wouldn't be here without people like you. That's kind of been our winning ingredient, certainly. But yeah, yes. A little bit about myself is I was born in Wheeling to Italian immigrants, educated here, went out of town for school. Came back, actually am a registered engineer, So I know. Yes, right? I know that. A lot of people don't know that about you. Exactly.
Yes.
And it is confusing and complicating, but it's adjacent to our wine shop here at Good Mansion. It's my engineering firm, but that was my primary industry, endeavor professionally. And then around 20 years ago, everybody goes through that I want a serious hobby phase, right?
Yep. It's a hell of a hobby.
Yeah, turn it up.
It's way more than a hobby.
Yeah, sometimes we wax nostalgically about the early days, right?
Yes.
Where it was more of it wasn't open 7 days a week,
right.
And it was just, you had lower foot traffic. It was easier. But yeah, we opened this in 2006 under just a whim that, there's no good wine shops here and that the Pennsylvania state store system adjacent to us was very regulated and didn't have a lot of happy consumers up in Pennsylvania. So we kind of footprinted ourselves right here in Wheeling, and we mixed like peanut butter and chocolate. We kind of mixed a historic landmark, which was the Ellis Good Mansion.
The Good Mansion.
That I had bought several years before.
Right.
And didn't really know what I was going to do with it long term, right?
With your engineering background, obviously, you thought about maybe doing some things.
Exactly. I had a couple properties that I rented, and I thought I'll find a tenant or do something. And then, there was just a random conversation over a dinner at my house years ago, and I thought, you know what? This could be a brilliant idea, is that you put this destination-based wine shop that would have an offering of wine that you couldn't really get anywhere else in the tri-state area.
Sure.
With this building that already had a lot of notoriety.
The
LS Good Mansion was part of the Victorian Landmarks tours.
Absolutely.
People were familiar with it, and it's quite an eye-popping mansion to come into.
Yes.
Right.
Absolutely. For sure.
Product aside, you could just walk in and just for the building tour.
Yep.
Which we do get a lot of those customers, and the tour is free, by the way. But at any rate, we mixed.
The wine is not.
Exactly. Just for the record, just in case the ABCC is listening.
And don't grab stuff and run out the door. We don't need any of that.
Thank you for that, Jason. So and then it kind of just took off. At the beginning, it was about getting the word out, but we had a very loyal customer base at the beginning that drove us. There was a lot of curiosity in wine at that time in the aughts. A lot of people were getting into wine in the 90s and aughts. So it was a good time to be. It was a very ascendant time in the wine market. And then as we got more into selling wines, we developed this, large customer base, not only of Wheeling, but we had a lot of Pittsburghers coming down because all it took is for one of them from Mount Lebanon or Swickley or whatever to visit the shop. And then they talked to all of their friends.
Exactly.
We went viral basically before that term,
Yeah. Before it didn't mean, you got like a disease of some sort.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. So, and then that kind of drove us. We established this community of people, people that were basically into wine were also very interested in, they were very particular about their food.
Sure.
So we got more and more people commenting about wanting cheeses.
And a lot of, your stuff here is, you import from all over the place. Yeah.
On the food side, we do. Yeah. Wines, you're not allowed to by law. We buy from our in-state wholesalers, but it's the tail wagging the dog in the sense that we work with importers a lot. The in-state wholesalers to try to work with certain importers.
Okay.
Get importers registered, their portfolios registered in the state so that we can get wines that heretofore would not have been in the state.
Okay.
We have a long legacy of that with working. And that's what makes us unique is we've brought in a lot of wine labels in the state of West Virginia through our collaboration with the wholesalers that otherwise wouldn't be here.
Right.
So we kind of are really kind of one of the primary retailers that really define what wines are available in West Virginia.
Well, and I mean, being, I go to Pittsburgh a lot. We got an office in Pittsburgh with my firm, and I'm there all the time. There is not a better shop. And I'll tell you this, I have a couple guys that call on me from Chicago. And when they come to town to call on me, they always stop here because you have a better selection than the Chicago shops.
Gosh, I'm blushing.
Yes. I have one guy that tells every time he comes to town, he wants to bring lunch to the office and he wants to come here and get lunch.
Yeah.
Because he buys, 6-7 bottles while he's here.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And that is a significant thing that people don't realize about Wheeling is we're really kind of a nexus for the winos, wine lovers, is that we're a real destination because for whatever reason, even outside of the Pennsylvania state source system, you have the same similar setup in West Virginia as Ohio and other states, but they're just, I don't know what it is, but no large comprehensive wine selection like ours has ever been able to really kind of take foot in larger markets. So for instance, even in Columbus, we have regulars from Columbus because there's just not the one place that existed that kind of maybe resemble what we did went out of business. So there's plenty of smaller wine shops, but there's not, in terms of portfolios of Italian, French, German, Spanish, you're just generally not going to find it. It's very hard to find. And then also in the larger markets, they've been kind of eroded by these big box, the Total Wines.
Right.
They've sapped a lot of blood from independent wine purveyors to make a go of it.
Well, Costco's gone neck deep in wine.
Yeah. So we kind of thrive just in the same ways we do with foods. We're under the radar because we're in a small enough of a market where a lot of these big box predators wouldn't mess with this market. So this market actually is a great petri dish. It allows us to thrive under the radar.
Great point.
And we're proximitous. We're very close to Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Columbus.
When you're on a corridor, being on 70 corridor is huge.
I mean, Google just, streams people in our shop.
Sure,
so
absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Good point. So that is, and that it just kind of evolved, and then we got more and more into the food that we directly import, right? That just happened by another curious accident, but it evolved into something major where now we're doing a substantial amount of our sales. Jason, I know you like your wine. You like your meats and cheeses.
I do, yeah.
The dry Italian imports, that's a huge component of our business.
I can't even imagine.
And it is just as much if not more, of a destination for the shop, for customers. Yes. Because there's nothing like, people don't realize this, but in the Pittsburgh market, there's really no one else directly importing. And I don't want to, not malign, but I don't want to misrepresent what we're saying. You have Delalos, for example.
Right.
They do a lot of private labeling. So they have factories that are putting things in tins and jars, slapping their label on it. That's a little bit different.
Right.
We're carefully procuring family-made food products and reducing the food chain, the supply chain greatly by working directly with these Italian producers. These are small, very, very highly coveted.
Right.
They do the circuit of the international trade shows. Sure. They're at all the good Michelin star restaurants, their products.
But outside of that, you would never know these guys exist unless you're there or around them or maybe travel
or in these circles. Yeah, you could be in the upper echelons. These are food products that are sometimes you might see at the Eataly's that are around, so on and so forth. But we directly import. We work with these. We go to Italy all the time. We know these. We have good working relationships with them. You don't get that in the Pittsburgh market. No one's doing that. PenMax certainly doesn't do it. They don't import. They buy.
And PenMax gotten so big. They're more of a.
Their model's been different. Yes. They're always very, very good prices because they buy domestically from other importers. Right. They don't import. So it's a different model. We go directly to the source, and we're dealing with much more. We're much more careful. We're much more particular about
level of
provenance.
Quality, yes. Yeah.
We've always been about provenance. At the end of the day, if you think about wines is all about geography and terroir and place.
Yeah.
And you're very particular that you want to have this from here and that from here for these different meals and this different occasion. Well, it's the same way with these foods. We're very particular about what we source. We want to make sure we're getting good products that are the flagship products of the country, from people that represent their different provinces and regional specialties.
That's awesome.
So we have a huge draw. We have more Pittsburgh customers than Wheeling on many days.
That's astonishing.
I don't think people realize that we happen to be in Wheeling.
Yeah.
But
fantastic.
Without, we're not trying to negatively say anything about Wheeling because we're a finite market. We're small.
Right.
But we are very dependent on out-of-town business, and a large component of that is our Pittsburgh customer base that every weekend we get dozens of parties down from.
And naturally with the ethnic base in Pittsburgh, I mean,
it's a little more of a tilt.
Yeah. So you're going to get a lot of people who can't get what you have there. So they're going to come here because they can't find it anywhere else.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, for the same reason why people around Wheeling go up to Pittsburgh, they make a day of it. They go to this. You've got the same thing with people that come from the north, the North Hills, for instance.
Sure.
Swickley, Mars, we get people all the time, Cranberry area, that they'll come down and it's maybe an hour, 15 minutes. They make a day of it.
Yeah,
and they shop and they eat. They might go to Ogilvy.
Go to Ogilvy, right.
Exactly. And then we regularly get people from the South Hills. That's our bread basket, really. Our bread basket is the kind of Mount Lebanon, Peters, Upper St. Clair.
Sure.
That's really where
and you're getting a lot of migration right now out of Allegheny County because of taxes into Washington County. Peters is growing like a weed.
Yeah,
McMurray,
exactly.
Peters is
there's nothing like Good Mansion up there. So
oh God, no.
No, so they're down here all the time.
Awesome.
And it's been a winning formula that's kind of happened by accident.
That's fantastic. We're going to take a quick break here. We're on Bald, Bearded, and Bold. We're here with Dom Cerrone with Good Mansion Wines. We will be back in 1 second. Thank you very much.
Welcome to Guntree, West Virginia's 48,000 square foot facility with 22 indoor lanes, including 4 100-yard lanes, a world-class shooting range and training center that has the comforts and amenities of a country club. Whether you're a first-time shooter or a seasoned pro, it's the perfect place to host a corporate event, plan a family outing, train with a buddy, or level up with expert-led classes. Experience Guntree now open in Wheeling, West Virginia.
We are back here on Bald, Bearded, and Bold. We have the honored guest here with us today, the purveyor here at Good Mansion Wines, Dom Cerrone. We're talking about his business, the wines, the cheeses, the meats, the pastries, all the many things that he gets from all over the world that you can't find literally anywhere in our area other than here. And we're blessed to have him here in Wheeling. He's been a member of the business community for, 2 decades now?
2 decades for the Good Mansion, yeah. 06. So we're about to do our big 2-0.
Wow. Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah. Many backaches later, huh?
Yeah, I mean, it just, I've been coming here forever, and it just, the thing, and I'll fully admit this, a lot of people don't know this about me because, we've talked about my background. I grew up in Marshall County. I'm a Marshall County guy, played football in college, fought, MMA for a while, and people look at me and they think I'm a redneck, but, I had somebody tell me the other day, I screwed up with my beard. And I shaved one side off accidentally. I set my clipper to the wrong setting, and I went to I cut it like a big path. So I was like, shit, and I tried to fix it, and it was not happening. So I just shaved the sides off and went to my goatee. And I went to my barber, who is Chad. I'll give Chad a plug here. Chad Stradwick at the Fade Cave here in Wheeling. Chad shaves my head and trims my beard weekly on Thursdays. I get what he calls a flawless beard. I get a big hot towel, and they rub me with lotions and potions and all that. Chad's great. Chad's and anybody in the community knows Chad because he's controversial sometimes. He's not afraid to speak his mind. But when I walked in, Chad goes, "I hate it when you go goatee because you look like Stone Cold Steve Austin." But I was like, really? So now it's coming back in. But so I had to shave my beard off the other day. But get back to where we are. I kind of digressed there for a second into a whole nother area. I do that sometimes, but here when I come in, it just a lot of people don't know. Like I was saying about, I'm a big wine guy,
right?
But I am a big wine snob. When I was in college, I drank shit that nobody would ever drink. And one thing when I got out of college, I said to my buddies, I said, when I get a job and start making money, I'm not buying cheap booze ever again.
Yeah, you pull them off the top shelf a lot.
I do.
You make us have to dust.
Well, and you've given me some stuff that I wouldn't have otherwise. That you're like, hey, we got some of this if you want it, and so they have things here that I cannot find anywhere. And the other great thing about this place is your knowledge, Olivier's knowledge. If I need to know about something, you are literally an encyclopedia for wines.
Yeah, I mean, we're trackable. We might not always be at the checkout, but the beautiful thing about small businesses in general really is that you do have someone that knows their trade pretty well, right?
My.
And we're always just one step away where we can help you. And yeah, you do have pretty good taste. You like a good wine, but let's get back to that shit because we like the shit too. I mean, wine doesn't need to be complicated.
No, agree.
And so one of the things that I love about what we've introduced to the market over time is that you can have really, really simple, nice wines that are not expensive, that are perfect for everyday consumption.
Yes,
that people might not be familiar with because unfortunately, the wine fabric in America, this whole kind of grid, the supply chain in America through these big box retails is so horrifically narrow. They're dealing with basically about 3 or 4 conglomerates that own all of these predominantly California vineyards.
Right.
And they're putting very kind of homogenous, not particularly worthy of their price wines out on these store shelves. And that's what the average consumer is getting because everyone's tired. They want to do one-stop shopping, whatever.
Yeah.
For the same price or less, you can come and get some fantastic,
really
good wines that you can only get here because it's too much effort for that conglomerate kind of complex, the wine conglomerate complex to want to work with.
Right. It's just not
and the reality is a lot of these wines are from producers that cannot meet the obligations of that industrial complex. They want to order, 5 containers of a wine
and they can't, they simply cannot do it.
They can't. They're smaller producers. The beautiful thing about wine, and one thing that eludes me and really, really concerns me about the younger generation, so slap on the ass of Gen Zs and millennials, is that they need to get their asses back. They need to discover wine because they're the most, in a lot of ways, I find them the most paradoxical generations in that they've kind of drifted toward this kind of industrialized products, right? That are branded or marketed as being, earth friendly or this or that or crafted. But at the end of the day, there's nothing more that meets a lot of their concerns about the environment and about, anti-complex, blah, blah, blah.
Than small winemakers.
Than the culture of winemaking. It's in the hands predominantly in the wine cultures. So we're talking about what we specialize at Good Mansion, European wines.
Sure.
These are wine cultures. These are primarily cultures that make wine because they consume it and it's part of their everyday fabric with their meals, with their celebrations. This is not the wine industry that we see in the New World where there's huge agricultural tracts that are making wine for people like Jason, who's been very, very successful, and he's going to go buy in a winery so that he could sell it for 3 times the value in another 10 years.
And a lot of these things
not to malign you, but that's the profile of a lot of the California wine industry. Are hobbyists that are very, very wealthy, and they're engaging in it very, very different reasons why people in these wine cultures, this is their livelihood. This is their family land. This is, they make it to use, to have. Most of it is kept relatively local. It's not that far, but it's great product and it's not expensive and it's beautiful product. It's close to the earth. And generally speaking, when you're in these climates, they grow this stuff because they have success doing it. They don't need to work against nature with lots of pesticides and chemicals. And so people come into the shop a lot and they want an organic wine or they want a natural wine, which is just, it's chicken grown without hormones. It's the same kind of blah, blah, kind of mushy term that means nothing. These wines that are produced in these legendary regions like Piedmont of Italy, Alsace of France, you name it, there's many, Burgundy in France. they don't know the concept of heavy chemical treatment. They don't need it. It's part of the culture,
right?
Because it's so harmonious with that landscape.
They're family farmers, is what they are.
They're
basically.
family farmers, yeah. And so, what I don't get about this generation that's not buying wine is that there's a lot of contradiction. I mean, they've got to do a lot of soul searching about why they've kind of abandoned this beautiful product that keeps this beautiful quilt of labor and love in these viticultural areas. You know, if you look at these landscapes, it's like, why do you not want to support this?
Right.
This is supposedly what you guys are all about. And then they're going,
and yet you're walking away from it.
And then they're going and buying some heavily branded, you know, industrial beer that they can get at the organic, you know, it's organic, you know, it's like,
well, they stamp organic on everything.
It doesn't really mean that much. So I just think that when we talk about the cheap wine, you know, there's come into Good Mansion Wines and discover something that is in your budget.
Well, and one thing I was gonna when I say I wasn't gonna drink cheap liquor anymore. The thing here, when I say cheap, there's a difference between cheap as a price and cheap as a taste.
Yeah, right.
And like one of the things that I really enjoy about buying wine is it's a find when you can find a reasonably priced bottle that is amazing. You feel like
you're
it's
sitting,
a treasure.
You're sitting right next to some of the cheapest that are the best for the value there.
And you bring something that you can't get anywhere else. You would never, if you walked into a store that doesn't have a purveyor like you, that knows where they came from, knows what they taste like, you would walk by that wine and maybe never purchase it. Whereas you can say, hey, this is a great bottle of wine. And it you know, it's very reasonably priced, and you will love it. And that's what I mean. I come here because not only do you carry the top shelf stuff that I tend to like, but there's wines here that I've bought that one of you guys have steered me towards that is a $25 bottle of wine. We pop it open, and I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, right. There's a lot of them.
This is a find, man.
And we could say the same thing about the cheeses, you know, in the back.
Exactly.
I mean, that's the same thing is that there's just so many good things. I mean, when you come to the shop, it's a whole world.
Yes.
Kind of like you say. But that being said, to the listeners, I don't want to get them confused and think that we barter in food from all over the world. We really are gravitated toward, on the dry foods, Italians and a little bit of French. And during the holidays, it's a beautiful selection. And then on the cheeses and meats, you know.
Yes.
European.
Yeah,
European wines. We have wines from all over the world. Any winemaking area will have.
Right. But yeah, and the thing here, the holidays, you know, are when you walk in this place at Christmas, between Thanksgiving and Christmas, man, it's
beautiful chaos.
Smells great.
Yeah.
The products are amazing. What you have, because you bring a lot of stuff in. We were just talking about you're getting your order ready.
We're doing our holiday import order right now. Yeah, and you're met by that big wall of Panettone.
Oh my God!
The big island of Panettone.
It's everywhere.
Stretches all through,
it's a great place. I mean, it's a shop that you need to be in during the holidays, and it just the message. I think we've lost a lot. You and I agree a lot on, and we're both, you know. We're both Gen Xers, and I just, this new generation, I couldn't agree with you more. I think they don't know what they don't know, and I don't even know if they want to know because they think they're right.
I call it the Starbucks generation.
Correct.
Right? And they, you know, we're painting an extremely broad brush. This isn't any
right. We're not,
everyone,
not to whack everybody over the head. Yeah,
but yeah, they need to kind of up their ante a little bit and really discover some of these products and kind of they've been cultivated and what's the word I'm looking, coddled as consumers, right?
Yeah.
We can get into some broad political discussion here, but America is a country of consumers now, right? We don't make much, but we consume.
Yes.
And this generation is coddled by a lot of big box enterprises to get their apps, easy ordering, you know, quick food, quick drink, you know, all of this stuff, very, very expensive. However, you know, it's very expensive, and they're consumers, and that's the way that they've kind of grown up, but they don't have an appreciation for those that make, or things that are made,
or the craft that goes into what they're consuming.
Exactly. So if you come to Good Mansion, it's kind of like growing up.
And you can educate them on this, which is great. But you know, and the thing, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think a lot of that has come from social media is about branding. It's streaming. It's constant,
they're consumers.
Exactly. And I think that generation, that's where they get, everything comes from a phone.
Yeah. And it's also part of what I realized over the years, what are we about? Like what drove this? And I think at the beginning, and I hit on this a little bit earlier, but it's provenance.
Yes.
It's all about provenance, about where do things come from? Yep. And, people, there's a lot of curiosity about that in all generations now. There's a lot of current political discussion about our food sources and everything. But, that's why we got into wine is we wanted to bring all of these wines from these different areas that never had any market share around here. And we got increasingly interested in this whole concept of provenance, and we import directly from certain regions of Italy, different areas of excellence.
Sure.
And you go over to Italy and it's just such a different kind of consumer base in the sense that they are very particular about where things come from. They regulate everything to death.
Sure.
People love to complain about the EU. Well, guess what? It protects the consumer because you're getting
a quality product
that is actually what its guts is what it says it is, and it's coming from this area. Shouldn't we all be concerned about that?
You would think.
Right? And so, there was a lot of, during Brexit, a lot of the diehard Brexit people were complaining about EU regulating the name on an olive. And it's like, well, guess what? Who benefits from that is the consumer, and who doesn't benefit is the big industrial complex that wants to slap something on something that tricks the consumer. But at any rate, that was the whole drive of our food imports was that we wanted to bring these really optimal products that are beautiful expressions of place to this market. And when you go to Italy, everything is and France for that matter, these Latin cultures, they're so obsessed with source.
Yes.
And the primacy of ingredient.
Right.
And when in the back we have great lunches and we have great foods that we make, are the products that we use, the ingredients that we use may be significantly more difficult to get to the point where we lose sleep over the logistics of imports and getting all of this stuff to this store that we can use. Other places just open up a Cisco truck every week and it gets dumped on them, and it's the same as every other restaurant. It's all the same.
Couldn't agree more.
But we are fanatics about our sources. So our breads are all French flours that we import. All of our sandwiches are the Italian foods based on the Italian foods that we import.
Right.
The olive oils, every olive oil that you get is stuff that we're directly importing. That's from a lot of these growers are award-winning. These are coveted olive oils that are getting slapped on your sandwich compared to the questionable stuff that you're going to be getting through the industrial food chain here in the States. So, we're fanatics about that. And if you're discerning, or if you're really wanting to kind of know that what you're getting and what you're consuming is real and pure and minimal and direct, that's the other thing. Is that our products are going straight from these family farms. In most of the cases, these foods that we import, people don't realize they're growing it.
Yes.
They grow it, they bottle it in their laboratorio, which is what the family the business.
Right.
And they export it to us. It goes straight from the farm to our shop right away. And, that's
farm to table.
Exactly.
Farm to table.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's the same way with a lot of the wines, in the sense that a lot of these are just family producers, and they're bottling, processing in, and it gets right into the shop. You're not going to get it anywhere else.
That's great. We're going to take another quick break here. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit about your time spent in Italy and what you do and who you talk to while you're over there and why you go.
Okay.
And then want to finish up kind of with how the tariffs maybe are affecting your business naturally, with you being, importing from all the places that you do. So we're going to take a quick break here on Bald, Bearded, and Bold. We'll be back with Dom Cerrone here in 1 second. Thank you very much.
Every brand has a story. At Sparks Media Agency, we help you tell it. Authentically, visually, and with heart. Sparks Media Agency. Story-driven content that connects.
Okay, we're back here on Bald, Bearded, and Bold. We are here at Good Mansion Wines with Dom Cerrone, purveyor of many things wonderful about wine and food and imported foods and all the different things. And we just got done talking about, dealing with, family farms and people who craft and things that are made and not. I think there's a difference between being made and crafted and produced. And it's just, you can mass produce things, but the stuff that's here is good quality things that have been made many times by families that have been doing it for years and years.
They're of place.
Correct.
Products are anonymous.
Exactly.
They can just be batched at anywhere. They're
Yes.
not geography specific.
Yeah, this stuff is stuff. It's one of a kind stuff. But one thing I wanted to talk about, I know you travel to Italy quite a bit, and you're
Yes.
in and out. When you go to Italy, is it? I mean, I know you go obviously because you love it, and you know it's kind of like a vacation for you and a place to get away. However, I mean, you're there on business constantly.
Yeah, and that varies. You know, sometimes you do the trade shows.
Yes.
Right. You know, and you get to network with all of the people that you work with and scout out potentially new people. There's a whole community in Italy of these family businesses that have done. They self-support.
Sure.
They promote each other and they work these fairs. You know, these different expos that you can go to. We do that a little bit, but a lot of it is going around and meeting with existing, but also potentially new producers where you try. We've registered several with the FDA. We work with getting them registered with the FDA so that they can import to or export to us.
Sure.
We go visit them to work out issues, new products. You know, for instance, we were just over there a couple weeks ago working with an olive house that presses, you know, makes olive oil, but they also sell an olive that we need to get registered with what's called an FCE or SID, a SID registration with the FDA. This is very technical, but you know, we'll help.
But no,
with them.
okay, yeah, sure.
It's complicated.
They
can't
obviously
speak
want to
English.
get over here, and do some business.
Well,
yeah.
and primarily it's for us. So we
Yeah.
work with them. We'll work financially with them to make sure it's viable for them to do this. They don't speak English fluently that much, so they need assistance. So we do that. We do, you know, they just want us to visit for the reasons why, you know, anyone that you sell to, you'd want to like showcase. So yeah, we touch base with them. You know, we also,
and obviously
learn a lot.
you speak fluent Italian. So
yeah. And you know, one of the good things that when you have to do business in Italian, you learn it real quickly in different dimensions. But also one of the joys is when you're over there, you're at restaurants, you're in stores, you see things. We have a retailer that we go to regularly. It's a little mini good mansion in the area that we go to.
Oh, that's neat.
And his name's Raimondo, and he's a great source. I just talked to him about some Panettone options.
Okay.
Hey, we're having some problems this year with this, blah, blah, blah. Can you give us some, you know, what do you recommend us? And he, you know, gives us names.
Sure.
He tells us about, you know, so we just see different things in retail shops. We get exposed, and at restaurants, you learn about different food products.
Right.
You know, you just kind of get in there, you swim, you get like a fish, you get in the pond and you start swimming around.
You figure things out. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So yeah, that's what and you know, we do a little bit of that in France too. We don't directly import our French foods. We deal with a great importer out of New York.
Okay.
That is, they're French and they do kind of what we do, but then they do some wholesaling. We don't like wholesaling.
Now, and Olivier obviously is from France. Grew up in
exactly.
France.
So he's the primary contact there, and he's more familiar with the product.
Sure.
But during the holidays, we have a great amount of beautiful French holiday imports.
Oh my God,
they're gorgeous. Yeah,
it's amazing.
Yeah,
during the
that
holidays.
in addition to the Italians, we have that's where the French really come into play during the holidays. So.
Yeah, fantastic. So, with that being said, I mean, like I said, I know you travel there, and I mean, you get all this things coming in, all the different goods that are coming in with the tariff issues right now, and kind of we don't really know still where that's going.
Right?
How is that? Has it affected you yet, or are you still kind of figuring out where the pricing is going to end up here, you know, in the next 6 to 8 months?
Right. Yeah. So we just don't know, and that's very, very frustrating. It's very, very difficult climate to operate in. We have, like you mentioned, we have to do start placing our holiday orders this week. Today we're working on it. We're just going to proceed assuming that what we know now is what we know.
Right.
And that if there's radical changes, you know, you pay later on, a little bit later on in July, after you place the order. So, you know, we'll just see what happens then. We might have to cancel some. It's going to really impact some of the higher price point items that are what we call eye candy in the shop. These beautiful products that really only belong in, you know, boutiques in Manhattan and London and Milan. And they're here, you know, some of these might get impacted because they just might be out of the price point. It's very frustrating. We don't know what's happening.
But you can't, I don't know how you run a business like this when you simply don't know what how you're going to be able to price your product and going forward, what it's going to be. It's amazingly difficult.
You try to absorb where you can, but at the end of the day, you have to make sure economy is reality.
Yes.
It's not ideology. It's not fiction. It's not it. You have to pass along the costs.
Correct. Well, and people, I hear the thing where they're all, they're saying, the thing, I've heard Trump say several times, well, they shouldn't pass this on, and they should.
But then it's a tax on us, and we're Americans. So do you want to tax? If you're not taxing the consumer, you're taxing the American retailer and importer.
Correct.
So you're taxing someone.
Well, somebody. My response to that is somebody's not spending because of that. Whether it be the retailer on more goods and services, or the consumer because the price is too high, and naturally that's gonna affect the bottom line. I don't care what you say; they're gonna have an effect.
Yeah, and the families that we work with, I'm not interested in trying to talk them down because of some issues that have nothing to do with them. On foreign soil. They work their asses off.
Correct.
They are hard workers. They're producers.
Yes.
They're not consumers. They're producers. They're working long 13-hour days.
They're in the sun, in the dirt, in the mud.
Yep.
Yes.
This is not, we're not talking about, corporate fat cats that are making 500%, 5,000% profit on things.
Their margins are slim.
I'm not interested in, they need a livelihood and they work hard for what they do. I'm not interested in working them down because of some issues going on that have nothing to do with them.
Some crazy ideology.
Right.
Yes.
So at the end of the day, it is difficult. The consumer will feel it. One of the things people don't realize is it's not, you talk about imports, and most people think about that. They ask us, a lot of it's going to impact domestic products.
It is.
So in other words, all of these wines, the domestic wines, where do they get their products from? Where do they get their bottles from? Where do they get this is stuff, America doesn't make much stuff anymore. For better or worse, you can have 80 podcasts on that aside.
Yes.
But the reality is a lot of this, our economy is dependent. We're woven into this fabric of international supply chains.
Correct.
And so therefore, ironically, back in 2017, when this first went on, the first thing that happened was that we noticed an increase in domestic wine prices. And I don't know if that was because of supply chain or anticipation that other foreign wines would go up in price and that they were going to start working it. I have no idea why, but that was one of the really, really curious things. And then we noticed a suppression in the increase in the imported cheeses. They tried to hold on for a while, but eventually they did go up.
Right.
It was a very weird. So, we've seen increases in the cheeses already, fresh products, right?
Right.
They have the tightest cycles, right? They're getting flown in every 2 weeks.
Correct.
So we've seen certainly that. Other things that are more stable, they might have cycles that are only 3 or 4 months. Yeah. So we haven't seen everything yet.
No.
But with regard to what we directly import, the verdict's out. We're going to try to bring in as much as we can. But between that and the weaker dollar, which is really the much bigger culprit for us.
It's huge.
It's huge. And what people don't realize is that, I remember the days you talked to Brits and how much they loved the strength of the pound. Mm-hmm. They owned the world.
Yes.
They could buy anything.
When the dollar had gotten there.
Right.
We were there with the dollar.
We were at parity.
And now we're seeing
we're at parity with the euro. And now there's this a lot of policy is going on that's driving the dollar down. The dollar is very weak. So people need to realize when they come into our shop during the holidays, things are going to be more expensive for at least at a minimum because the exchange rate is very weak. We're not a strong country anymore. We're in a much weaker position in that sense.
Correct. And I don't think, and this is one thing I have talked about with what I do at the firm when we're talking about, the markets and things like that. I don't think that there's been a very good, I agree that as a country in certain instances, we have to address some of the reciprocal tariffs, but I think there's better ways to do it. And I think that you can do it in a more healthy way, in a more specific way than he has done. But what I don't think the administration has done a good job of is looking at the dominoes. Yeah. It really, there are so many things that affect other things. I think they have looked at it as, if we raise tariffs, they'll stop coming in and they'll buy more American. It does not work that way.
No. And at the end of the day, like I said earlier, economy is just reality. Economy, what does it come from? The Greek word home.
Yes.
Like you're just running a home.
Exactly.
It's reality and it is what it is. And, ultimately you've just got to do what you got to do to survive.
To adjust, right.
And, if prices are increased, it's not because of any kind of mentality or ideology or whatever. No. It's just the reality of what a business needs to do to survive.
Exactly right. And like I said, I like to hear, they talk about how it affects mom and pop shop. You're a mom and pop shop.
Yes, certainly we are.
And this is, most of the jobs in America are driven through small business, and small business is the largest part of the consumption that goes on here. So I just like to hear how it affects people like you.
Yeah, and we're certainly unique, and there's a lot of other businesses, I'm sure, that are feeling it in different ways.
Sure
right?
thing.
Right.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, I wish you the best.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being on.
It was a real pleasure.
Always a pleasure.
Absolutely.
To see you and be here and buy your stuff. And you do a wonderful job. Olivier does I know Olivier's shy. He doesn't. He's just like he's like a ninja. He's like a food ninja.
Right. He likes being behind the counter and then coming out and giving customers a hard time.
Yeah, and he does
dry French sense of humor.
Exactly, and he's amazing. So, but thank you so much. An honor to have you on. Yep. Thank you so much. We'll have you on again, I hope. But this is Bald, Bearded, and Bold. Thank you for being with us from Good Mansion Wines. It's been our pleasure to be here. Stay blessed, and remember, try and do what Jesus would do. Thanks so much.